For all of your medication and narcotic tracking needs, check out the LogRx app, created by career EMS professionals. That's LOGRX.com.
Hello, one and all, and welcome to another edition of the EMS Pod with Chief Randell. Today, I need to get some questions answered. And yes, I have been EMSing for over 25 years, loved every minute of it, and I want to even grow with the potential of, who knows, EMSing in different parts of the country, right? As I get old, I start looking at weather and my bones are telling me to do something different. So with that being said, I had a conversation with the director of the EMS in the state of Indiana recently, and he talked about something known as the EMS Compact. And I am as curious as much as I love food. So we decided that this would be a good conversation to have on the EMS pod. So without further ado, we'll get started and start this discussion on the EMS pod, on the EMS Compact. And with that, we have, I'm just gonna call them Donnie and Kraig, and they'll let you know who they are and their role in this process. Take it away, Donnie.
Hey, well, thank you so much, Chief. Well, it's good to be here. I'm Donnie Woodyard. I'm the Executive Director of the EMS Compact, and it's just a joy to be in that role. I think before you'd asked just for a little background. So this is my 30th year in EMS. I started as a volunteer in Virginia and then migrated to Ohio and Indiana and had the chance to serve as EMS Director in 2 states. And then became part of the EMS Compact and now the Executive Director. So it's a joy to be here with you this morning and talk about the EMS Compact and what it means for EMS in this nation.
Thanks. Kraig?
Thank you. Kraig Kinney, I'm glad to be here. I was the one talking with Chief Randell, and I always appreciate good discussion, particularly on the Compact. Kind of my background, I've also been 30 years. It's kind of a good comparison to Donnie. My focus has been in Indiana, and I have been here a number of years. And I've been in the state office now for over 4 years, and we have been in the Compact. We joined right as I came in, and I have served several roles within the Compact and am currently the chairperson of the Compact Commission, where every state has a commissioner on the actual EMS Compact.
Very good. Well, thank you for coming. Let's get right into it. So the first question, of course, what is the EMS Compact?
Hey, well, that's the great starting point. So the EMS Compact is an interstate agreement. And it's an interstate agreement that is entered into by states when they pass a law called the RUPICA, which is the Recognition of EMS Personnel Practice Interstate Licensure Compact. So the states pass that piece of legislation, and that forms a contract that is also the state law. And when multiple states pass that piece of legislation, you form what's called an interstate compact. Now, before I get into maybe what the EMS Compact really is, just to dissect the understanding of compacts a little bit. Almost every EMS provider in the United States has a driver's license, and I guarantee you, Chief, they've probably driven in more than one state. And we don't think about it, right? But the way that you can drive in another state on your Indiana driver's license is because states have said, hey, we're going to have the same requirement for how you become a licensed driver. We're going to have the same education, the same type of road test. We're going to have uniformity in road signs. And then we're going to share data, and we're going to say, if you recognize my driver's license in your state, I will recognize your license in my state. And because of that, you can literally fly anywhere in the country, get in a rental car, and start driving. Now, you also know, Chief, that if you get pulled over because you're speeding in another place, they can actually hold you accountable. They can validate your license is valid and legal. They can even, issue you a citation, take you to jail, do whatever's needed. And then that record comes back to your home state to actually sort out if there's any implications there. That's a compact. So it's this legal agreement between states that says you can do this and I will do the same. And that's how that works. Right now in the United States, compacts are the gold standard for occupational and medical licensure. It's the gold standard for medical professions. Right now, there are 17 of those agreements. The EMS Compact is one of those. And we currently have 24 states, 400,000 EMS personnel. And because of that, we have a mechanism similar to your driver's license where on a no notice, you can actually utilize your privilege to practice in a remote state because your home state and the remote state have come to a legal agreement that's codified in law. So that's the core, but then the compact is overseen by a commission, which is the government body. And I might hand off to Kraig here as the chair of the commission to talk about the role of that government body and what that does.
Thank you. The Compact Commission is created. Each state gets a representative, and that's part of adopting the replica legislation that Donnie referenced. And I think what's interesting about the Compact, we get the information that, this is about a certification system. It kind of breaks down the old reciprocity requirement. I shouldn't say breaks down. It creates a different pathway than those. You can still do traditional reciprocity, but there's so much more to the compact as well. The compact there, when you actually look at the language, there's a bunch of different, what I would label as advocacy types of areas that the Compact Commission can come together and actually make a change in EMS and particularly EMS certifications. And so our commission has been very engaged in recent years, and particularly with Donnie's encouragement, we have some position papers, for instance, background checks. Background checks are a requirement to enter into the compact coming up in October. If you are joining, then you would have to have a criminal biometric background check in your state as part of the certification process. Well, the Compact Commission said, well, really, shouldn't this be a nationwide standard? Even though we represent 24 states, we want to challenge those other states. And we adopted a position paper that says every state should be doing criminal biometric background checks.
Wow. So I know, Director Kinney, that you are the chief of the EMS system here in the state of Indiana. So the compact, of course, as a whole is a nationwide process. How did Indiana get involved into the compact?
Oh, great question. And I was fortunate to be involved in the beginning, so I have firsthand knowledge of it. It's kind of interesting. I first heard about it because the Bowen Center, which deals with healthcare professions and occupations, it's part of Indiana University here in Indianapolis. They hosted a kind of understanding compacts and kind of follow up on Donnie's theme. They said, hey, we were looking at a nursing compact. Shouldn't EMS look at this national compact? And they did an information session. Dan Manns at that time was coordinating for the EMS compact. He did a great overview, and we had some powerful legislators that even sat in, and that put us on the radar. And it did not immediately pass, which is common with a lot of states. But after 2 years, then it was enacted into law in 2020.
Okay. Now, when it comes to this compact, there is some terminology that can be a little confusing to the average provider. One of them is privilege to practice. Can somebody address what that really means?
Yeah, happy to take that. So the privilege to practice is it's your privilege as an EMT or paramedic to practice in a state that you're not licensed in. So, as we build into really explaining that privilege to practice, there are a couple other key terminologies that's real important, and that is home state and remote state. Home state is where you're actually issued a license. And so, for instance, if I'm licensed in the state of Indiana, then Indiana would be my home state. I'm currently licensed in the state of Colorado. I'm a Colorado paramedic. That's my home state. And then a remote state is any other state that is part of the compact where I'm not licensed. So, for instance, for me, Wyoming would be a remote state. So the privilege to practice is the ability for me as a Colorado paramedic to actually immediately practice in the state of Wyoming or the state of Idaho or the state of West Virginia. And so with that, it is the legal authority. In fact, the law says that remote states shall recognize my privilege to practice. Now, there's a few things to keep in mind. EMS practitioners, we do not have an independent practice, meaning that, I can't just go and put my shingle out and say, rent a corner shop and say, Donnie paramedic, come and see me and I'll take care of your needs, right? We have to be part of an agency and we have to have a medical direction. And with that, we have to have operational protocols. So I have a privilege to practice that's valid, but I have to make sure I'm with an agency and a medical direction and protocols. And for those three things to come together, there are two options for me to have that coverage. One is I could be with my agency in my home state, and I am deployed to a remote state on official business, and then my home agency provides medical direction, protocols, scope of practice, etc. The other option is maybe you have a large event, and Chief, I remember years ago when I lived in Indiana, you guys have this kind of large event that happens there every year called the Indianapolis 500, right? Maybe maybe you need a surge of EMS personnel to come in and help with that. So as a Colorado licensed paramedic, I can come into Indiana and work that event, and I don't have to get a state license. But here's the key. I would have to affiliate with a proper agency that is approved by your state to work in that event. If that agency hires me or affiliates me, then I use that agency's protocols and medical direction and I get affiliated. The key is I don't have to stop and get an Indiana license because Indiana is part of the compact. And then, Kraig, as the state director, can actually hold me accountable. And I don't know if you want to address that process, but that's how it works, Chief.
I would add real quick, I think we had a great example this morning of the simplicity of it. I had a text from a district manager and he said, hey, I have an employee that works for organization X. Their ALS, their medical director is signed off. This person's coming from Texas, so he can join and they can roster him, right? He doesn't have to do anything through our office. I just want to confirm. And sometimes it seems so simple, and I confirmed, I'm like, yes, they need to check, make sure he has the privilege to practice on the EMS Compact website. And if it is valid, absolutely, he can go to work. He has that ALS organization, their medical director, and then they roster him, which is how we find out he's here in Indiana.
All right. So this person in Texas, let's assume that they had no idea on how to do this. This is something I'm going to try now because now we're talking about it. But what are the steps to becoming this privileged to practice person in different states?
Yeah, man, that's a great question, Chief. So first and foremost is everyone in EMS needs to know what their national EMS ID number is. And so the national EMS ID number was implemented a little over 5 years ago. And it's a number that the National Registry actually issues and tracks. And I want to clarify, they issue and track this for anyone who's been nationally registered ever in their life, but they also work with states to issue this number for those people who got grandfathered in who were never nationally registered. But the National Registry issues this number. It's a 12-digit number. If you have a National Registry account, you can log in and you can see it. Now, this number is actually your key to many things. It's the key to the EMS Compact, but it's also the key to entering continuing education. If you attend like the GEMS conference or another large conference out there, it's your EMS ID number that's going to be used for tracking your education. So it's a unique national number. And then you go to our website, which is emscompact.gov. And when you're on that site, you'll see a place that you can enter in your EMS ID number, and that will search the National EMS Coordinated Database. Boy, it's a lot of terminology in this show, but that's the National EMS Coordinated Database. And if you have a record in that database, it will show on that website. It's going to turn green and say that we found you. It's going to show if you have a privilege to practice. It's going to show what state you're licensed in. Then there's a little caveat to that, and that is the technology piece. So we have 24 states in the compact, and we still are working with some of our state partners to upgrade their data system to make sure that those database records are fully connected. We have a few states that are upgrading their system. So while we have 24 states in the compact, if you have a privilege to practice, you can work in any of those 24 states. We still have a handful of states that don't have their records in the system. So if you're an EMS practitioner in one of those states, you're not going to show up yet, but those states are working diligently to get connected. Does that make sense, Chief?
It does. It does.
Yeah.
So I put in, first I get this number, I put this number into the compact. If it goes green, I'm good to go. And if it doesn't go green in one of those, what does that mean for me? What do I do?
Yeah, so if it does not go green, that means that for whatever reason, your individual record is not showing in the National EMS Coordinated Database. And the information is controlled by your state EMS office. So there are two things that you can do. At the emscompact.gov website, we have a map. And that map shows not only which states are part of the compact, but it shows their data integration status. And if you look and your state is in white, that means they have not yet transmitted that data, but they're working on it. So that would probably explain why you don't have a privilege to practice if you're from one of those few states that are in that position. You can also contact your state EMS office and ask them. And so sometimes it could be a database entry problem, or it could be a key entry problem. Those are rare, but that happens. But the EMS Compact, we do not change the data. We cannot modify the data. That your data is controlled by the state that issued your license. So you would contact that state office.
Okay, so we can flood Director Kinney's office if we don't have ourselves in the compact database, correct?
Yes and no. In theory, according to Donnie. And I think it's interesting, we are down to just a handful of states. Unfortunately, I'm disappointed Indiana is one of them. And that has to do, as we know in Indiana, we use our ACADIS as our system. And it's not heavily used nationwide. And so therefore they have the way their files are stored, it's not conducive to going into the NIMSCID, the National EMS database. And so we are actively working with them on trying to come up with a solution to get that data in. There are alternatives. I know, for instance, Texas has worked with us. If we have someone wanting to go to Texas, let's say you want to go down there, Doug, and you're like, hey, I want to go to Texas. They will sometimes do a verification through our office. Is it in fact in good standing? And the idea is you get away from where you print out your certification and email them and say, hey, I have this Indiana, here's my paramedic license, I'm good to go. Well, the problem is that's dated from the moment you print it. If the next second I take action on your license and it's not active, that would not be reflected. And I think that is the huge benefit of the EMS Compact is the states that are in there, it is triggered. And in fact, if once I'm integrated in the database, if I take action on someone, it's going to notify the other states immediately. And then they know that privilege to practice is either paused or permanently revoked.
I'm really glad with this Texas example because I actually have family in Texas, and some days it's a little bit warmer than Indiana. So
it is, yeah.
So let's say I do go down to Texas and I practice with this privilege, right? How long does that last for before I have to maybe switch over completely?
That is the struggle. I saw Donnie start to answer. I will give a whack first, but that is the struggle. Some compacts do note in their certain condition, such as a residency requirement. Our compact, when it was adopted, the replica legislation is quiet on it. And it basically says you have a home state and the requirement is you are certified in that state. So the compact, the rules and bylaws committee is struggling a little bit. And frankly, it's an issue for all of the commissioners. Is there a time limit? There currently is not, but there's discussion whether there should be rules. I did have someone, oddly enough, Texas example again, someone that wanted to go work there, and he did not want to have to retake the National Registry, which at the time they were requiring. So he said, I will move there permanently, and I'm always going to maintain my Indiana license. And that made them a little bit, nervous because they're like, well, it's kind of odd. You're going to live and work in our state, but work off an Indiana license permanently. And I think that shows a little bit of the concern that some of the state officials have. As I noted, though, the employer always has the option because I talked to the employer. I go, hire them and require within a couple of years or whatever you think's reasonable that they obtain their Texas license or certification.
Okay, so this can be prescribed per state. So each state may have a different rule in how that may happen, correct?
So, I think the key is when you become part of the compact, you agree to work as a unit. And so we have all these states have agreed to actually unify and speak with one voice and streamline. And so that's what the compact does. And so it's really up to the compact commission to write an administrative rule that would really address this issue. And so that's the key. So as states right now, we can certainly encourage the individual, hey, if you're going to make this your new home in a reasonable amount of time, get licensed in your new home. That's the right thing to do. But it's important that we work as a unified unit of all compact states that have similar legislation, similar administrative rules. So right now, the official answer is there is no time limit on that privilege to practice. Now, I know you come from the fire service. We were talking about that before we started. And, I remember visiting, your firehouse there. And, if I think back 20 years ago, the concept of lateral transfers in the fire service didn't exist. But now lateral transfers in fire service, lateral transfers in EMS, that's a normal part of life. In fact, we have a very mobile workforce, and they, just like you mentioned, hey, it's great in Indiana, but I might want to go and enjoy some sunshine, or I might want to go and enjoy some mountains, and the EMS Compact, and I will say the 17 professional compacts for pretty much all of medicine are now embracing that's our workforce expectation. So you can be licensed and you can be mobile. You can go and work in Indiana, then you can go work by the beach, then you can go work where you can go snow skiing and still be a professional in all those places. So, things like lateral transfers is so key with how the compact works. But if you do choose a home, you know what? Go in and get licensed. Transfer your driver's license, transfer your paramedic and EMT license, and become part of that state. We encourage that.
Donnie,
No,
Donnie's kind of our expert, but yeah, the driver's license, it is required, I believe, in most states. Once you live there a little bit, then you have to obtain that. But again, our compact is currently silent on that.
Yeah, it almost gives the paramedic an opportunity to go to a state and, in a sense, try it out. It's like going shopping, right?
Yes.
And if it doesn't work out, they can go back to the home state. So lots of ways, whether it's a disaster or they're trialing it for a period, it gives paramedics some mobility. So that sounds wonderful. So you were telling me that there were 24 states. And I remember some of the schooling that I got when I was knee-high to a spitball, and there were 48 of them continental. So why are these other states not joining? What can we do to help with that?
Chief, that another great question there. So, there's a few things. One is, if you go back about 10 years, the concept of occupational licensure concepts was relatively new. The Nurse Compact was out there a little bit before us, and they had really kind of paved the way. But it's not been, except for the past 5 years, where the other medical professions have really embraced this concept, and now it's the gold standard for licensure. So answering your question is, well, one, it's still a relatively new concept for some states. The other thing that's out there is, as you know, EMS is faced with a lot of challenges right now. We are currently working with sustainability issues and billing and finance and, payment. How do we sustain our operations? How do we deal with workforce issues? And all of these issues really do require some type of legislative involvement. So when stakeholders are out there and they're working through the issues, what I'm seeing right now in states is the legislators are saying, give me one EMS bill. And let's see what we can do with that one bill that you're going to propose. And frankly, right now, a lot of that effort is going into billing and payment reform, our core sustainability. And so it's very difficult to mobilize your stakeholders needed to say, oh, and the compact. So that's actually one of the realities in some states. The other is education, which is why I'm thrilled to be on your podcast. Frankly, a lot of states still don't understand the compact. And then there's also been some historic concerns out there of, hey, maybe this is going to hurt our workforce. Actually say that this helps our workforce. Recruitment and retention is a big problem in EMS. And we talked about it briefly a few minutes ago, but the modern workforce is not the workforce that grows up and stays in their hometown. People like to be mobile. The EMS Compact provides you a new solution for that. So education, prioritizing which bill gets in front of your legislative body, and really stakeholder involvement. We're a government body. I'm an employee of a government body, so I can't advocate for your state. I can help answer questions, but I can't go and introduce a piece of legislation. So in the 26 states, and by the way, the territories, they can be part of this. So we have 56 opportunities here. You need stakeholders that educate themselves, work with their legislative body, get a piece of legislation. And then once that happens, I'm happy to come on an airplane and answer questions or even testify. But I can't be the one that introduces the legislation.
Is it possible, or have you already gone to some of these state conferences, especially in states like Ohio, Illinois, Michigan, California, for example, that you can present this at these state level meetings and conferences and say, let's get this ball rolling? Has that been a possibility for you?
Absolutely. And I'm happy to go to any conference State conference, regional, local, just reach out. You can find my contact info on emscompact.gov, but reach out, extend that invitation, and I will be there. We'll have a conversation. We'll work through any questions that your stakeholders may have, and by all means.
Okay.
I think, Doug, as an example, I think we're going to have Donnie is attending our NASIMSO, which is National Association of State EMS Officials. So it's state directors and our staffs. We have a regional meeting, which is all around us. It's Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Minnesota, and Wisconsin, and all 6 states will be present. And we've invited Donnie to come speak and kind of share, because of our region. Even though I'm chairperson of the compact, I'm the only state that is in there. I do know sometimes we hit a hurdle, and that's why we love opportunities like this, because Donnie, with our encouragement and frankly his enthusiasm, he applies for a lot of these conferences, and we do not get speaking slots. And we think it's because there's a lack of understanding, and they think we're trying to sell something or otherwise. And really it's sharing about a opportunity for states to engage with this government body.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we can do as a team, because now we're a team, fellas, congratulations, is if we can send this out to all of the state chiefs, the bosses, especially those that are not part of the compact, and give them kind of a marketing idea, right? Like, how do we do this? What do we need to do? If you had a couple of sentences to just break down the importance of this for them, because if it doesn't work for them, it doesn't work for anybody, right? So what couple of things can you say that would really reel them in and say, yes, I want to join the compact?
Hey, Chief, here's the things that I would tell you or any chief out there. Joining the compact is good for the state, good for the individual, and good for your agency. And let me break that down. And by the way, it's good for public protection. So for you as an agency, you now have the opportunity to really work with a national workforce. And it's not about you losing people. It's about making sure that when you have an EMT or paramedic and they are wrestling with, do I stay in the profession or do I exit the profession? Because life has taken me to a different geography. Life has taken me to a different state. The right answer is always, let's keep them in the profession. Because the reality is, as we hear time and time again, if moving to a different state because life situation changes, and now you have to go back and retake your exams and go back through months of bureaucratic paperwork, that's where we see a lot of people say, I'm done. The EMS Compact solves that issue. As Kraig said before, you can literally move a state, and if your employer credentials you and puts you into their roster, you can start right away, number one. Number two, for the individual, for those who are out there and their life has them in different areas. I've met people with 25 active licenses, flight paramedics with 25 active licenses. Can you imagine maintaining 25 licenses? No, the EMS Compact solves that. And so you have one license that you maintain, and it gives you this privilege. And then for the state level, the EMS Compact not only reduces the burden on paperwork, but it also allows your state to do their job better. And their job is to ensure that the right people are in the profession at the right time. And, there are unfortunate things that happen out there, and some people have to exit the profession. But as part of being a profession, we self-monitor our own profession. And the EMS Compact helps in doing that. And then, Chief, I think the final thing I would add is, we all three have been in EMS 3 decades now, right? And we love EMS. This is what we do. And, we've been constantly saying EMS is a medical profession. We are professionals, right? If you ask any of us, we would say that. Well, the reality is in medical professions, occupational compacts is how they operate now. And if we don't want to be left behind, if we don't want to be disenfranchised as a profession, we have to embrace this across the nation. Let me just tell you, I've mentioned 17. I'm not going to read them all. Let me just tell you some of the compacts that are out there that our EMS colleagues may not know about. So we have the nursing compact, but there's also the dental compact. We have the physician medical license compact. We have occupational therapy, physical therapy compacts, physician assistant compacts, psychology compact, social work compact, dietitian compact. You get the point. Every medical profession has a compact. And if we want to be a medical profession as an industry, we have to embrace this. We have to unify our standards. We need a single one voice approach when it comes to defining our profession at the national level. The compact does all that.
I would add, I think from state perspective, I have a better awareness because of our discussion of the other states. And I really think there's going to be a trickle down effect. The compact became operational in 2020 and maybe not. I always mix up my terms, Donnie, correct me if I'm there, but that's when we were, people were using the compact, it was going, so we're learning our lessons from it. But what I learn of other states, I believe is modifying our approaches as well. Because when I hear Texas, I mentioned at one time, reciprocity was like Indiana. They had to take national registry. I talked to their commissioner, their state director, Joe Schmieder, he was our past chairperson as well. And he's like, why are we testing people? That's entry level competency. But yet you have a state that says they're competent with a license. It's a compact state. Why are we testing them? And it changed how we do business in Indiana. And now if you're with a compact state, you no longer do the entrance testing just to come to Indiana and work if you are coming from a compact state. And so it makes our reciprocity easier. So if they do your suggestion, they come try Indiana, we hope they love it. They come here, they like it. If they want to get reciprocity, it's much streamlined for them, as it should be. And so I think that's where Donnie talks about that kind of unified vision, I think is going to trickle down to our state membership.
Wow, this is exciting. I didn't know a lot about this before this conversation, and towards the end of it, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to report back to the listeners on how well it went. So whatever we can do at the EMS Pod, we are more than happy to. Once this gets published, we'll get it out. And hopefully we can reconvene and talk about the bump of providers and states that were influenced by your elevator pitches.
Chief, thanks so much. It's a joy seeing you again after many years and talking about this. Our office is there and ready to help with any questions anyone has. We would love to see all 50 states and territories part of the compact so that we can together advance profession with a unified voice and a unified vision, and continue so that those who come after us can really enjoy a system better than what we even started out with 30 years ago.
I agree. Thank you. And thank you for your advocacy, Doug, with having the podcast and reaching out and informing people, because we have to get this word out. And this is a great opportunity. And this is one facet, but an important facet of EMS, and always appreciate being able to speak with you.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate creating a new friend in Donnie. And of course, my mature friend, Kraig. So with that being said, please enjoy the next episode of the EMS Pod with Chief Randell. Thank you, and I'll see you again soon.